I was born in 1960, so I usually describe myself, I would say, as an older woman, but not as an old woman. When you get older, the things that you go through in life, they add dimension to what you think about, what you research. The questions that you ask are quite different. I'm not trying to solve the world's problems. I don't think that they can be solved.
I was born in February 1967. I remember when I was approaching my 50th birthday that it was really difficult. And I said to my husband, I don't want to do anything for my 50th birthday. I want you to do everything. And I'm going to go swimming. And then I'm going to come home to a dinner party that you arrange. And then when I came home, the doorbell rang. And all these friends started coming up the stairs, singing. And they were all dressed as famous artists. And Johannes was also dressed, and the kids. I was the only one that was myself, and then I was just surrounded by all these famous artists. And after that dinner, it was like I was liberated from age. Like I turned 50, but I became young again.
Many of these artists that are in the exhibit were in the first generation of artists who had access to the academy or maybe access to private lessons. So they knew each other from those private lessons. They exhibited together at either Charlottenburg or Dintry. Every spring and every fall in Copenhagen in the 1900s, there was the annual exhibition season. So whether you were a Charlottenburg artist or you were a Dintry artist, you were in Copenhagen, and they would have meetings at people's houses, and so they knew each other, and they built on each other's art. You can see motifs kind of passing back and forth with each other. It suggests that even if you don't have the institutions in place, and maybe you're not getting the financial support or the critical recognition, that the artists came together and lifted each other up. When the paintings were done, the view of older women was very much dependent on what class you were in. If you were poor and older, you were kind of a problem, because this idea that you were getting older, that people were living longer, was actually something that was quite new. These older women, there wasn't a way for society to take care of them. They were no longer as productive on the farms. They were no longer as productive in the factories, especially as things like blindness happen or mobility issues. There was really no structures in society to take care of them. And most of the artists that we're seeing are from the middle class, I would say. And for most of them, this idea that they would either be erased or that they would be not valued was something that went against their own personal experience within their families and within the immediate circles, so that they saw value in older women who they knew. We see images by painters like Christian Zartmann that have these exaggerated caricatures of what aging looks like. I think that the older women artists that we're seeing in the exhibition have a much more nuanced depiction of what aging as a woman looks like. You sense their beauty in the ways that the wrinkles are not taking over the face, but kind of enliven the face. And you see very expressive hands. And they are doing things, right? They're not static. They are reaching and touching. They are looking at you. They are engaging with you. But we also see that women are walking. We don't see that they are cycling, but they are cycling. They are traveling to the Arctic, to Rome alone. They are traveling to Greece at a time where it was, 4 or 5 different train changes. You're carrying your equipment. You're wearing these silly dresses that come down here. So maybe we don't see them actually traveling, but we do see that they are painting the places that they have been. Effie Hagerman Lindencrone, the porcelain sculptor, you see these muscles that are local. She's picked them. She's been in the mud, and you know that she's been in the mud, so that's doing something. And in the case of Lugakona, Anne-Marie Carl Nielsen's statue, that woman, who is an older, poor woman, is pulling weeds out of the ground, and her hands are these big, strong hands, and she's flexed them and she's pushing them in the soil. And that's the same thing that Anne-Marie Carl Nielsen does when she shapes clay. She pinches that soil. So that's doing something.
I think what really has drawn me to these women who are doing landscape painting has a lot to do with what happened politically and socially at the time that they came of age and were working. The reforms were happening that allowed them to own property and have businesses and not be accompanied by, relatives or husbands. That gave them this kind of a free moment before the awareness came to, oh my God, they're really free. They're doing all these things. We have to now put in sort of more moral and cultural repressions. Marie Henriquez's print from 1912, I think, is a very interesting image in the sense that she chose that temple, which is part of the Acropolis, and she's traveling there on her own. That temple has columns that are classic female figures with a drapery. They're just decorative, but they're bearing the building. They have the weight of architecture on them, which becomes a symbolism of this kind of invisible labor that is actually sustaining the whole structure of the building. What is the reason that there's very little focus on women in landscape painting? Maybe has something to do with the fact that the women that we know were often married to men that were famous. Whereas these women, predominantly who are doing landscape painting, are not married and do not have children. For the most part, they are not tied down by these responsibilities and expectations. So they're free to define their own space. It started dawning on me that these reforms are happening at the same time, to do with the female body and its ownership over that, its reproductive rights, its labor, and the landscape and ownership over that. In terms of land rights and land reforms, all of these are happening parallel to women's rights reforms. So as they're demanding their rights, they're also demanding the rights of the landscape.
I think it's very harmful for people not to see older women and for older women not to see themselves. It hurts society when we don't see all of the people that can participate. And maybe they cannot participate in a capitalist sense, in that maybe they're making the kinds of profits that they would have. But no matter what, nobody should be erased in society.